So welcome to the introduction to the permaculture class, and today we're going to do the introduction first class. And the best place we can start is explaining how I got involved in permaculture. So this starts some 20 odd years ago when I studied plant biology at university, and then for around 12 years I didn't really have much to do with the natural environment and just working in the city. And then 6 years ago we started traveling as a family and doing a lot of volunteer work. And one particular place where we volunteered is called Sedana Forest, which the particular one we went to was in India, in the southern part of India, in Tamil Nadu, in a place called Auroville, which some of you may have heard of, which has a giant golden golf ball at the centre which you can meditate in, and it's very much crystals, and it's like the opening scene of Superman. It's kind of funny. Anyway, so Sedana Forest, as the name may suggest, is about foresting, reforestation. And when we were there, we were one of 150 volunteers. So it's a pretty big place, very well organised. And they'd already been running at that point 10 years now, it's been 15 years. And at the centre of the organisation is an Israeli family. And one day I was talking to Avram, who's the dad of the place, so to speak. And he said, Russell, if we just the first year, if all we had done was plant trees, the first summer they would have died, because the climate there, and climate's always really important, is one of monsoon, so lots of rain, followed by a really hot, dry summer. Okay, the land that they were starting with had been deforested. People had cut down trees and burnt the wood for cooking dinner. And what had led afterwards was loss of topsoil because of the heavy rains. So the soil they started with was very bad. So they had to set up a system where they would build soil, but they'd increase the humus levels, using pioneer plants, basically acacias in this case. And once the soil conditions had been improved, they also needed to capture all the rain to stop it just leaving the site, so they'd have water to use during that hot, dry summer. So they did a lot of things with swales and earthworks, like dams. So they did a lot of different things. So that was a system, okay, that was a design, and that was my first introduction to permaculture. And even Avram gave us half an afternoon water storage course, and got to use an A-frame and how to measure out a swale. So I found it very fascinating. And from that point forward I started doing a lot of self-study on, there's lots of tools and resources available on the internet, and books that are available. And so I did a lot of self-study and continued doing volunteer work at lots of different projects and different climates to gain a bit of experience. And eventually we ended up here on the farm in Colombia, and the intention of this place as a farm, but more importantly as a school, so to teach people whatever the teacher is teaching, so to speak. And in my case I thought I would like to teach permaculture. So to be able to teach permaculture, at that point I formalized my studies in permaculture by doing a PDC, a Permaculture Design Certificate, which is a 72-hour course. And I did my course online with a guy called Jeff Lawton of Australia. Jeff Lawton was taught by a guy called Bill Mollison, who was the co-founder of the idea of permaculture, a guy called David Holmgreen, both Australian, in 1978, I believe. And Bill Mollison wrote the textbook, basically, a permaculture designer's manual, which is like the textbook to look at. It reads a bit like a textbook. It's a school book, but you can learn an awful lot from picking up a copy and having a look. And it covers all different climates and all the possible different things that permaculture can offer. Okay, so Jeff did his PDC in 1983 with Bill Mollison. So Bill Mollison, Jeff Lawton, Russell, you guys, you're close to the top. And what is permaculture? Well, basically, originally it was, kind of two words put together: permanent agriculture. The idea that we can farm on a permanent basis, that we can farm sustainably. Okay. Now it's sort of accepted it's permanent culture, permaculture. We can have a permanent position on the planet. So it encompasses more than just agriculture. It's also our living spaces, our house design, the way we can sustainably use materials by construction, way that we can organize our cities and living spaces and communities, and lots of very interesting things. But basically it's design. It's a design science. So whereas at university you might study things like biology or chemistry, and they're separate, but with permaculture it's all accepted. It's life. It shouldn't be divided. It should be considered as whole. Holistic view of things. So we've got this design science, great, but a science is a science. So what we've added in, to make it really important, is ethics. Okay, so it's a design science with ethics, and this is what makes it stand out different. The ethics of permaculture are, first of all, is earth care, so caring for the planet. Can you imagine? And then caring for people, so people care. And the third one, there's different views on what the third one is, but I'm going to go with future care, so caring for the future. Okay, so if we can design systems which are sustainable, which take into consideration caring for the planet, caring for people, and caring for the future, then we can say yes, we're doing a permaculture design. If we can't tick those three boxes, then it's officially not permaculture. Okay, so there's also directions where permaculture focuses. Okay, so redesigning sites that have been damaged, so rebuilding damaged lands, stopping pollution, stopping erosion, growing food organically, and getting a living ability from your land. So there's different sort of sites that we should focus on. And reforestation, of course, is a huge one. Up till now, humans have been, should we say, the most destructive element of our ecosystems. But we do have the potential to be the most constructive element of our ecosystems. If we're working together with good design and good management, then we can actually repair most of the damage we've done up to this point pretty quickly. Okay, it's really not too late at this moment. If we continue much longer along the current spectrum of world growth and the way that we use resources and damage our ecosystem, then at one point it will be too late. Some people say it is too late, but I'm an optimist. Have to be, right? And so let's stay optimists and say it's not too late. We've got an opportunity, but it's an opportunity which will eventually disappear. And I'm not going to say that the planet's dying. I'm just saying that us as a species, the conditions will not be appropriate for us to be able to live on the planet. if we continue using resources and farming the way we do. Okay, let's talk about farming. Okay, because most people think about farming with permaculture. So let's have a brainstorm of, you know, what do we consider modern agriculture? Okay, if we were to think about a farm, you know, an industrial scale farm, what kind of things are we going to see and feel and smell and etc.?
Monocultures.
Monocultures. What else?
Pesticides.
Pesticides. Okay.
Heavy machinery.
Machinery. Yeah.
Big fields.
Big fields.
Yeah, and no incorporation with the living area. It's excluded.
Okay. So we can say, as well as pesticides, we can just say chemicals. Okay. Big fields, monoculture, heavy machinery, probably very few people in the fields. Okay, people are kind of excluded. I'm going to tell you a little story. So we've got this farm, and let's say on that farm we're growing corn. Okay, so we've got these big, huge fields of corn, and a locust, insect that likes eating corn, it comes down and it says, "Wow, look at all this food." He gets really excited. And he said, "Well, it's a bit too much food for me, in fact." So he reaches for his mobile phone and it says, "Hey mum, hey dad, primo, neighbor, my friends, there's a feast here, let's go and eat." So all their friends and family come down and they start munching away in these cornfields. And the farmer comes out and looks around and says, "Oh my God, I've got a plague problem." So what does the farmer do? Well, the farmer gets in the tractor or the airplane and fills it full of pesticide. Okay, and sprays up and down those fields with pesticide. And yeah, the pesticide probably kills the insect that it wants it to. Probably kills other insects as well. Some would be beneficial. Okay, but what's also happening is this poison is also going into the soil. Okay, and in the soil we should have lots of microorganisms. Yeah, so small you can't see them, they're microbial in a microscope, but they are there, or they should be there. But when you start poisoning them, they start to die. Okay, so if they start to die, then the conditions in the soil change, and the soil actually starts to repair itself. How does soil start to repair itself? Anybody? Worms? Yeah? Worms certainly do help improve soil conditions. What about plants? Okay, so plants are actually the soil's way that it can repair things. You know, if there's a particular need, you get a particular type of plant. You know, if the soil's really compacted, you get things like dandelions, because they've got a big root and they push open the soil, so they decompact it. So with a little bit of experience, you can identify the needs of the soil based on the plants that are growing there. Okay, plants, but the farmer doesn't see plants, he or she sees weeds. Okay, so the farmer says, "Oh my God, I've got a weed problem." So guess what? Gets back in the tractor or the airplane and fills it full of herbicide. Okay, and sprays that all over the fields again. And guess what? It kills all the weeds. That we're doing a repair mechanism. Okay, so now again more poison is going into the soil. Okay, so the soil is becoming less and less fertile, and as soil starts to die, it starts to lose some of its abilities. One of them is its ability to be spongy. It starts to collapse. There's bacterial gels that kind of give it sponginess, and these die. Okay, and so we have this issue where the soil collapses, so it can't retain as much water, so then you're going to have to irrigate more. None of these chemicals are free, by the way. They're all at a cost to the farmer. Not necessarily the farmer I'm not saying the farmer's a bad guy or a bad girl, It's just a system, right? But the system's wrong at the moment. So we've got more poison put into the soil, and now the plant starts to suffer. So what does the farmer do? Has to get back in the airplane and the tractor and put into a bunch of fertilizer. Not natural fertilizer, but one that's come from the petrochemical industry. Usually it's a urea, which is a kind of salt, and you see the packets that say NKP on the side. And because it's a salt, it's then mixed with a bunch of water, and it basically forces the plant to take up this chemical. And so the plant takes up the chemical, and it has the effect it desired. The plant kind of gets full of water and full of chemical, and a bit like on steroids. And that gets shipped off to us in our supermarkets. So we get lots of vegetables which look kind of good on the outside, but inside they're full of water and chemicals. And we wonder why more and more people are having illnesses related to food. Okay? The other thing is, with fertilizers, is that because they're water soluble, most of it doesn't go into the plant. Most of it goes into the soil, into the water courses. And in the water courses, it hits other plants, water weeds. And they say, thank you very much, all this extra nutrients. And they start to grow and grow and grow, and so much that they grow, they actually choke out all the other things. They choke out the whole river systems, the whole lakes. And they start then to push out all the fish, and eventually they're so massive that they start to putrefy, and so the whole water system starts to die. And that's a direct response to our current agricultural system. So we've got food which is probably low in nutrient and potentially high in chemicals, and we've got water systems which are being destroyed. And if we go back 100 years, we would find smaller fields. Okay, you could still have a main crop, but you would be in a smaller field. It would be surrounded by edge. It would be surrounded by trees and hedges, other plants, and there would be habitat there for other animals, mammals, birds, other insects which are beneficial. That locust flies down and says, hey, I found some corn. Great. But then the bird that's sitting in the corner on the tree says, hey, I just found my lunch. So there's always that natural balance. So nature knows how to deal with things. And really, if we can design systems which are in balance, like the same way that nature deals with things, then we have a sustainable future. It doesn't mean that we won't be able to feed all the masses. Quite the opposite. We can easily feed everybody with a good permaculture design. Okay, so how do we go about doing a permaculture design? Okay, where do we start? Well, first of all, realize where you are. What climate are you in? Are you in a temperate climate? Are you in a tropical climate? Are you in the Arctic? Are you in an arid desert kind of climate? They all have different ways to design for. Okay? The next thing you need to do is observe. It's almost do nothing. But you're not doing nothing, you're observing. You're making notes. And if possible, for 1 year. Before you do any major changes to a system, try to observe for 1 year. So you see all the 4 seasons if you're in a 4-season climate. Because if you do something in 1 season, not knowing what's going to happen later on, you may find it was a big mistake, which costs you a lot in resources and time, financial as well. Okay, our lovely kitchen here. Okay, we're sitting in the kitchen. Okay, so when I first bought this farm, there was a kitchen, but it was built for Colombian people. So it was about 1.50 meters high, and I'm 2 meters tall. So it was a bit difficult for me to use the kitchen. So it was a priority for me to build a kitchen. Okay, but I said, okay, we bought the farm in a dry season. There was water in the river. That was the first thing that we saw. Water in the river. That was a kind of a big observation, and we saw lots of farms that there was no water. People say, oh yeah, there's water when it rains, but there wasn't water today. Well, this place had water, so that was the first thing that we observed. But knowing that Colombia has a lot of rain during the rainy season, it kind of made sense to wait until we'd seen at least one rainy season before determining where we were going to locate our kitchen. Because if we put it 30 meters that way, between here and the lounge, on a rainy day, that's a river. You may not realize because it's been dry when you've been here, but on a big rainy day, that's a nice big river. So putting the kitchen there would have been a silly mistake. So it's worth observing for as long as possible. Maybe it's just the wind, maybe it's all sorts of things you're going to be observing for. Okay, so once you've done your observation, you're thinking, the first thing you really think is water. Okay, everything about water. Could be water collection from your roof, could be you've got a river running through your property. It could be, how can I get rid of excess water? How can I store water? Is there a place where I can store water that I can then use during the dry months? So everything to do with water. Okay? And then you're going to move on to access. So paths, how you're going to get in and out of your property. How can you get your produce to market potentially? And then you're going to think about positioning of buildings. Okay? So we're just going to expand on that topic a little bit using the board. So I'm going to give you a little example here. We've got a profile like this of our land. And what we've observed is that in January, February, during the cold months of the year in the Northern Hemisphere, that we figured out that the wind comes from this direction, and it's a cold wind. Okay, so we have choices. Where should we build our house? Okay, so we're talking at the moment about energies. Okay, energies that are coming in. Okay, so in this case we've got a cold wind. So we could build our house here, here, or here. So if we build it here or here, then we're going to get a strong cold wind, which is going to cool the house down. Okay, over here, so the wind would be lifted by the profile of the landscape, so this would be a secluded spot. So if we're just focusing on the wind, that would be the ideal spot. Okay, if this was this is a cold climate example. If it was a hot climate, you might find this is a cool afternoon breeze cooling the house down. So say, well, these two are the best spaces, because this one, the cool air goes over the top, pushing hot air down, and you probably end up like in a sauna. The Finnish would be happy. So, most other people not so much. Okay, so thinking about the landscape and how its profile. Okay, now if you add an extra feature, let's say our feature is the sea. Okay, so the sea is over here. So now you've got a view. Okay, a view is another thing to consider. Okay, you've got a sea view. Well, probably you're finding that these 2 points become, more preferable than this one, because people pay a lot of money for a sea view, right? I'd love to wake up every morning to that view. Well, go ahead and do it. So these two would probably be your better points. And then you'd say, well, in that case I want to block that energy. So maybe you grow some trees here. Okay, or even a little slope that pushes the wind up. You can do things that will push the wind away from your house. So then you're blocking an energy. And if it was that cooling afternoon breeze, maybe you want to channel it. So maybe you want to plant trees in a kind of funnel. So again, you're accepting an energy. So you're either blocking or you're accepting. What other energies do we need to be aware of? The sun. Okay, so the aspect of the sun, are we south facing, north, etc. That can make a big difference to our heating of our house and also for growing of plants. Okay, south facing in the northern hemisphere is usually what most people are looking for. Okay, what other things we've got to consider? Let's go to an urban setting, yeah? So we've got a road, everybody's got their little boxes. So the neighbour's house is here. So we've got cars. Okay, what energies we've got to think about now? Pollution. Okay, that's an energy. So we've got air pollution, we've also got noise pollution. Okay, so do you want to put your house right next to the road, or you want to put it back there? Okay, so noise and pollution, air pollution, that kind of thing, can be things that you want to accept or block. Okay, the rain, knowing how much rain, which way does the rain come from, whether you're going to have to store a lot of rain, to get you through the dry months, whether you need to evacuate rain because otherwise it's going to flood you out. All these kind of things is another big energy. Okay, so thinking about energies, if you live in a country where you have animals, imagine you live in Africa and you've got elephants roaming around, the back garden. Well, that's a pretty big energy to consider. Okay, maybe in kangaroos in Australia, in Europe it may be deer and foxes, a couple of squirrels, badgers, things like that. So you've got animals that migrate. So understanding if you're it could be that you need to allow animals to migrate. If you block them, suddenly they can't pass, and they get stuck on one side and kind of isolated. That may be very detrimental to them. Okay, so the next thing we're also going to talk about now is zones. Now the chickens are starting to sing their songs. Okay, so in permaculture we use a system of zones. So the house is zone 0. Okay, around your house is zone 1. Okay, so zone 1 is the place where you're most active. Basically zone 1 is not a natural zone. It's completely controlled and dominated by our activity. Okay, if we weren't there, zone 1 wouldn't exist. Okay, the fact that we're there and it's so close to us is our most active point. So things like vegetable gardens. Vegetable gardens do not exist in nature. Okay, they're a man-made element. Okay, we control them. If you walk away from a vegetable garden for a year, you come back, it will not be there. It would have been taken over by something. Okay, so all the activities that require a lot of attention and time, we want to put close to the house, because we want to be efficient with our time. Okay, we don't want to have to spend 10 minutes walking to a vegetable garden if we can just do it in 30 seconds, because those 10 minutes add up. We've got other things to do with our lives. Okay, so zone 1. Zone 2, a little bit further out. So zone 2 could be somewhere where you go twice a week. Okay, my example here is the bananas. Okay, so bananas do not need my attention every single day, but I like to go and harvest bananas. I go and do a bit of maintenance there, so probably twice a week I'll go to that area. Okay, so we've got zone 2, then we've got zone 3, and then we've got zone 4. Okay, so zone 3 could be for if you've got a farm, with things like dairy cows, you put them in zone 3 for pasture, and zone 4 would be long-term forestry. Okay, you don't have to go to zone 4 very often. Maybe once a year, maybe once every 20 years. Okay, so it'll be far from your living area. And then you've got zone 5, which is wilderness. A place where you go to observe, enjoy, recreation. Okay, if you're in a city and if you've just got a balcony or you've got a small garden, everything is going to be zone 1. Okay, the bigger your property, the more zones you could potentially have. Even in a small, city garden, you could, have everything zone 1, but this little corner in the, that's wilderness. I'm not going to touch it. In that wilderness area, you have all sorts of things that would happen that would benefit your zone 1 area, because you're creating habitat which doesn't exist in your very controlled zone 1. So you may have beneficial interactions, insects that can survive there that couldn't survive in your highly controlled zone 1. So you can benefit from like having a little wilderness area even in a zone 1 concept. So if we think about animals in zones, then the zone 1 animals, what animals would we put in zone 1 around our house? Dog, yeah, cats. Chicken, okay, so this is an interesting point. A chicken, okay, I thought, yeah, chicken, zone 1, right? I've got to open them, I've got to close them, I've got to feed them. That's at least twice a day I've got to go there. That's a zone 1 element. But think about it. A zone 1 element should also be something that you can live in peace with. Okay? Chickens are not that easy to live with so close to your house, as you guys know, right? They can be noisy, they can be disruptive, they can be destructive. Okay? So in fact, chickens are on the edge of zone 1 and 2. They're a zone 2 element, but not too far away, because you do have to visit them twice a day. Okay? But they're just a little bit further away than how I have them positioned. So it's a mistake. I made a mistake. And after I did the PDC, and my course instructor Jeff Lawton said chickens in zone 2, I was like, yeah, I know why. I know why. I got it wrong. So zone 1 animals are things like rabbits and quails. So they can little eggs from quails, you can do them. And then zone 2 is things like goats. Zone 3, bigger animals like cows and horses, elephants. Okay, so you've got the idea of zones. We can also, when we're doing design, okay, you can do things on maps, but really most of your work is going to be doing on observation in the field. A map is a great tool, but it doesn't show you the position of trees, for example. You're going to have to mark them on the map. Okay, so it's starting with a map is not necessarily a good idea. It's starting with observation, walking around, making notes. Okay, our brains are really clever things, but sometimes they miss connections. Okay, so we can help our brain by playing games with words, for example. So this is a little game that you could play. Okay, so we're linking words together, we're stacking. We're going to start over here with chicken, and then we're going to have a linking word like over. Let's do under. Okay, next to. Let's have greenhouse. The glass house for storing the plants in the winter in the cold climates. So, and let's have water, fire, house. Okay, so let's try it. We've got chicken over water. Chicken over water. Does that work? Got a few no's, but in fact it does work. Okay, so imagine you've got your water, and you've got the bank of the water. So you could have a chicken house over water, okay, and you've got the chickens roost up here, and they do their poo, and their poo falls down into the water where it manures the water. So by manuring the water increases the plants that will grow there. More plants equals more fish. Okay, so that would give a benefit to the system. And chickens are happy over water because foxes don't swim too well. Okay, so that one does. Chicken over water. You wouldn't necessarily pick up that connection just thinking about it, but by playing with words. Chicken over fire. I like that one. Chicken underwater. No, it doesn't work too well. Chicken next to house. Wow, it's a zone 2 element, so that would be a bad idea as well. Okay? Now, greenhouse over water. No, I can't really see it. Greenhouse next to house. Yeah, that works. Greenhouse over fire. No, it didn't work too well. Okay? So you could do lots of different combinations. You could, just pick up a bunch of random words, random assembly, and play with them. Okay? Let's have another little analysis. Okay? So in this case, we're going to analyze an object. This object is going to be a chicken. So let's think about the chicken's needs, its products, and its behavior. So what needs does a chicken have?
Must be fed.
It needs food, space. We won't determine how much space because chickens don't need that much space, but they should be given more space than what they get in some farm situations. What else do chickens need? Water, yeah?
Yeah,
Shelter, yeah, we'll call that shelter. That will encompass a safe place to sleep and live. Okay? Hello, cat. Off you go. Good. Okay, so they also, do you see one chicken? The chickens need chickens. They're sociable.
Mm-hmm.
So chickens, okay. They also need dust. You see them, they roll around in the dust. It helps them keep themselves clean. Okay, and they also need grit, small stones which help them break up seeds. So like eating seeds. Okay, what products do chickens give us?
Eggs.
Eggs, yeah. 2.
It was chicken.
They give us chicken, as in the meat or offspring.
They give us both.
So they give us chickens and they give us meat. What other products can we get from chickens?
Feathers.
Feathers, yeah. Noise. Okay. Are they cold?
No, I don't think so.
No, they're warm. They give us heat. You can actually, if you've got a greenhouse, and in the greenhouse in the winter it can still get cold, but if you put chickens inside a shelter, so you can't free range them inside the greenhouse, they destroy everything. But if you put them inside a shelter, inside the greenhouse, they'll heat the greenhouse. Mm-hmm. So free heated greenhouse from chickens. Okay. So I think that's the products we can get from chickens. Okay. Now, what behavior do chickens have? What do we observe them doing? Pecking.
Yeah,
Scratching. Okay. So now we've analysed. We've thought about behaviours, and then we could actually take this, and someone did. They took this observation, and what they came up with was called the chicken tractor. Let's give you the idea. Let's say we've got our garden, okay, and we've divided it into 6 sectors, okay, and we put our chicken mobile house in here, and we put a fence that the chickens can't get out of there, okay. So our chickens are confined to this area for X amount of time. Okay, and then we're going to move them next door for X amount of time, and then we're going to move them, etc. Yeah. What happens after we've moved our chickens is what behavior chickens have. They have scratching, they have pooing, they have pecking. Okay, so basically what they're doing, they're scratching the dirt all day long. They're looking for seeds, so they're taking out any weed seeds. Okay, they're also taking out the weeds themselves, so they'll take out grasses and things like that, and they're also defecating. Okay, so basically they're taking out all the weed seeds, all the weeds, and they're fertilizing it, and they're scratching. So if you add mulch in there, they're adding more mulch and adding organic material. Okay, so they're doing tilling as well. So once you've moved them, this area has basically been gardened for you. It's been perfectly prepared, ready for you to come along with some seeds and let nature do its course. Okay, they're far better at weeding and de-seeding than we ever could be, and they do it for free, and they'll give you the other products. They'll give you, as long as you're giving them their needs, meet their needs, they'll give you everything. Okay, so it's a win-win, and you just keep rotating them and you've got a chicken tractor. Okay, so the chicken tractor. What else we got today? So I mentioned at the start that when I was at Sedana Forest they did a lot of earth moving with terra movers. If you want to be a good permaculture person, usually you got to be to get in the dirt and move it around. So there's lots of systems that we can use, and one that's very, very useful is the swale. So we've got a landscape. Almost all landscape has a slope. Okay, even if it's a very, very small incline, there's still a slope, apart from perhaps on salt plans. Okay, but they're pretty flat. So here we've got trees. So when it rains, the rain hits the canopy. You've stood underneath a tree before and you didn't get wet for a while, right? Eventually you start getting wet as the canopy saturates. And so that rain goes down the trunk, and then it hits a decomposition area where the leaves fall from deciduous trees. It's kind of spongy, so it absorbs a lot of water, and then the roots of the tree allow the water to infiltrate into the soil. Okay, and underneath our feet there's water, groundwater. Okay, so the groundwater goes up and down in a range depending on the season. Okay, and that is a sustainable system, a forest system with water, and that will go on forever and ever. Okay, but what happens is people come along with chainsaws, they cut down the trees, the roots disappear. Okay, so now when it rains, there's nothing to help the water stay in the system, and so it runs off. Okay, and if it runs off, eventually it hits a river, and then the river is out to sea, and it's pretty quick. Okay, and because there's not much water actually going down, it means the groundwater starts to go down. Okay, springs start to dry up. If you're in an arid environment, this may lead to desertification, formation of deserts, okay, and all sorts of long-term problems. So as good designers and people who want to repair damaged sites, we can use swales to start growing trees. Okay, so what we've done, we've dug a little ditch and we've put the soil in front. Okay, and this ditch is on contour, meaning it's level. It's like this. So when the rain comes down, where's my blue pen? Oop. Okay, so when the rain comes, if you get enough rain, you can actually fill up this swale. Okay, you may have to have points where it can overflow, level spillways where you can escape water without it causing erosion. But the idea being we can fill up the swale, and then the water is going to percolate slowly on contour. So it's a kind of spread and soak. You know, rather than it being allowed to be surface runoff and put into the river and out to sea, we're doing a spread and soak. And on top of our swale, we're going to have trees. So this is a tree growing system. And in fact, everywhere down here is going to be more humid. So we're rehydrating the landscape. And we can capture an awful lot of rain very quickly, very efficiently in these systems. Okay? So much so that you may find after you've put a couple of swales in that, you know, if this was an old spring line here, suddenly there's water again, because now this water level has come back up again to a point where it's now in that sustainable range.
When you say dig a ditch which is flat,
Yeah.
what do you mean? 'Cause
Okay.
there it's round.
So imagine this is, you know, you've looked at a map before, and sometimes you see like an ordnance survey map, right?
Yeah.
And these are contour lines.
Yeah.
So let's say this is a 30 meters, means it's 30 meters above sea level. Here's the 40, and here's the 50, and there might be a little triangle here saying 65, like it's the highest point. Okay, so this means that this line, everywhere on this line, is the same meter above sea level. It would be flat. So this would be where we would build our swell. Okay, it would follow the contour. Okay, so it's flat, because if it was like this, when it rained, the water would go to the lowest point. We want it to be spread along contour and soak. So it's very important that we measure our swales correctly, and there's a really easy way to measure them, and that's with an A-frame. Okay, it's an interesting point, guys. Yeah, so here on the farm we don't have machines. Okay, we can't get machines up here, first of all, but we don't have machines, so we do it all by hand. Okay, which is a lot of work. You know, some of you dug a swale today, and it was a lot of work. Okay, you're going to sleep well tonight. And yet, if we had access to a tractor, you know, a tractor could do the job really quick. Okay, and it could do kilometers in a day. So you say, oh yeah, but it's using gasoline, and that's a source which is finite and not sustainable. Sure, but this is where it comes into, you know, like an accountant does an audit of a business, says, oh, you're losing too much money, you're going to be out of business. The same for us. If we do an energy audit, okay, for a small investment in diesel, what is the long-term benefit of building that swale of growing trees? It's huge. Okay, so it's well offset. So in this case, it's a good investment to use a tractor to dig a bunch of swales. Okay, it saves a lot of time. It's probably got GPS, so it's all nice and straight. So permaculture is not anti anything. It's just, is it a good energy audit? Is it worth it? Okay, and if it's worth it, then it's fine. If you're building something that's going to last for hundreds of years, the energy audit spread over 100 years is very negligible. Okay, if you design it badly and it messes up after 6 months, then it was probably a waste of your money and a waste of your time. So you've got to design things correctly that are going to last as well. Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.